All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We have a lot of stuff that we are going to go through and talk about. I'm going to try and keep it to about an hour so that way I can respect everyone's time. And if you're preparing for the Super Bowl, you can get to that if you need to and have all your dips and appetizers and all that fun stuff for this evening as well. If you missed my instructions at the beginning, if you see here in the bottom left of the screen, there is a QR code that goes to a Google form, and I just sent the link into the chat as well. Just again, I've sent it like 3 times now, so that way you can have access to that sign-in sheet. Just make sure, I would kind of keep it open on whatever device that you are on. So that way, again, at the very end, there is a spot for questions. So if you have any questions about anything that I go over, that we talk about, or anything at all, you can put them in the Google form so that way I can just have it all in one nicely comprised and organized area, okay? So that is the Google form that is in the QR code in the sign in there in the bottom left of your screen, all right? Just real quick before we get started as well, if you feel comfortable, I'd like you to have your videos on because we are going to do breakout rooms a little bit. So that way you can talk to some of the chaperones, you can talk to each other and just kind of get to know some of the people that you are going to be with on the trip. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But if you would like to definitely turn your videos on for when we get to those, I mean, now would be great, but also for the breakout rooms, because you're going to do a little interactions with some people in that, and hopefully it'll be a good experience for you to just talk to some people that maybe you've never talked to before. All right, so this is the agenda of everything that we are going to go over. Just again, as a reminder to make sure that you do the sign-in sheet with the Google form, and again, leave it open on your device or on your phone or whatever device you're using. If you have any questions, and then maybe at the end of the meeting, you can go ahead and hit submit, and that way I can have all of that sent to me. We have some deadline reminders that I'm going to send out to everyone of some dates coming up in March. And kind of looking further into the future for that. I'm going to give an update on the Global Citizen Scholarship because I know a couple of you have reached out to me because you applied for that and you're looking to know if you are the winner. I'm going to give some updates on that. Then we're going to look at some kind of pretty easy and run-of-the-mill travel items. Just kind of some things to think about in your planning and preparation. And also we will do a little kind of introduction to some packing ideas and during this meeting as well. Then we'll do breakout rooms. And this is going to be a good opportunity for you to talk to some of the chaperones that are going to be with us, and also with some of the other travelers that we will be with. After that, we're going to focus on Switzerland. It's going to be our first country of destinations for the trip. And so kind of if you've been in a meeting previously for another trip, I try, and especially when it's a multi-country trip, I try and do like a spotlight on one of the countries for each of the meetings sometimes, just to kind of give you the ins and outs of what to kind of expect when we're in that country. Then I'll talk about student roommate requests, which is a really important thing because some of you have asked about rooming with other people. So I'll talk about that later on. A medical profile form, which is very crucial for me to have for every traveler on the trip. We'll talk about passports, probably the most important thing right now to think about. And then we'll kind of wrap up and review and just share the next meeting dates in March as well. All right. Before I jump into the housekeeping reminders and the deadlines, just kind of thinking about the next few months. Obviously, we're still kind of in a holding pattern of not really knowing what's going on, which stinks because obviously we're all here because we want to go on this trip and we've been waiting 1.5 years to do so. Just the biggest piece of insight I can give to you about that is, we will make decisions for everyone as we are getting closer. And really when it comes to EF, EF does want to wait it out as long as possible to actually make sure that we are safe, these countries are safe, that we are going to. So there are a lot of questions, and some of you have sent me questions through email, through Remind, through text, whatever. And a lot of it is we're kind of waiting it out, and that's just kind of where we are. But the biggest thing is why I'm still holding these meetings is because to get you prepared and to get you with information that we do know and that we can talk about. So that way you are as well informed as possible when it comes to just getting us ready when it comes to passports or packing or whatever it might be. So that way, when this trip does happen, we can be ready to go. All right. So some of the housekeeping and deadline dates. If you had any special travel requests, those were supposed to be sent back to me via email in January. So if you were planning on like arriving early or not flying over with us or staying there because you're meeting family in Germany or you're going to wherever after the trip, you should have definitely let me know that in January. So if that does apply to you, definitely like I need to know like 3 weeks ago, obviously. But if you do not plan on flying over with us or flying back with us, I need to know that. Dietary needs and restrictions and any medical needs and restrictions, those are due today to me via email. I've heard from some of you about just like dietary needs, so whether it's pescatarian, vegan, things like that. Definitely just let me know if any of that applies to you so I can let my tour consultant know and we can make plans when it comes to any of those dietary needs and restrictions or medical needs as well for our trip. Passports and anything that has a little asterisk in the PowerPoint are things I'm going to bring up in a little bit more detail a little bit later on. But passport information and updated emergency contact, that is due by March 1st onto your EF accounts. So if you already have your passport and you haven't uploaded it yet, please do it as soon as possible. I know we talked about this back in November, and I am very sure that EF will continue to be flexible past that March 1st date, just because of longer wait times for passports to be received and processed and sent back. But I'd rather you be safer than sorry. So if you know that you're not going to have your passport by March 1st, definitely let me know so I can have record of that. But let EF know as well, just so they can kind of put a note on your account. And so that way it's not flagged or you don't get dinged whenever your passport isn't uploaded by that specific date. Okay. The last bullet point, if you are on the manual payment plan, so if you paid the extra $50 at the beginning when you enrolled to make payments as you wanted to, those individuals on the manual payment plan are expected to have their balance paid in full by March 3rd. And that was just in the stipulations whenever you enrolled back like a year ago for the trip. So if you are not able to do that, to have your full balance, if you're on the manual plan by March 3rd, you can let me know. I can't change anything in your account though. So you'll definitely have to call EF and let them know that if you want to switch to the automatic payment plan and like divide it up for the last few months before we go, they can definitely work with you and are willing to work with so many different scenarios and situations when it comes to just making sure that you have the opportunity to make the payments as you're able to. So there aren't a lot of you that are on the manual payment plan, but if that does apply to you, just make sure that March 3rd date is approaching. Okay. For March 7th, there's a lot of big things coming up in March for March 7th. The first thing are passports. So I will need 2 color copies of your passport given to me by that date. Now, as I've said in my emails, I hope that we can have our March 7th meeting in person. And that's going to be kind of a decision that is made as we go throughout February and into the beginning of March as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about those color copies later on in the meeting. The second thing is the student roommate request Google form, which I'll also bring up a little bit later on. And that's going to apply to every student who's going, even if they already know that they're rooming with their mom, their dad, grandma, grandpa, that is going to be applicable to every student traveler. So anyone under the age of 20. The third item that will be due on March 7th is the medical profile form and a copy of your insurance card. And that profile form I'm going to bring up later in the meeting as well. And then the last bullet point is adult roommate requests and or family room accommodations. About 2 weeks ago, I sent emails to those of you that have families or groups of 3 that are going on the trip to kind of call EF and make accommodations for a family room. So if there are 3 of you or even more that are going on this trip, you can call and make that accommodation to room with your family at no extra cost. If you are an adult traveler that's going with your student, your child, and they don't want to room with you, that's fine. They can obviously room with any of their friends that are going on the trip. And as an adult, you will be paired with another adult traveler, or you can also just pay an extra fee to have your own individual room. And if you have questions about that, that can be something that maybe you email me individually if that applies to you. All right. So a lot of big stuff coming up on March 7th that will be due. And again, some of these will be gone over a little bit later in the meeting because they are forms and copies of things that is just a lot of paperwork coming in, both digitally and in person. So I'll make sure to talk about those a little bit more in depth here as we go on. All right. Okay, so some of you have reached out and asked about the Global Citizen Scholarship. I think 3 or 4 students actually did the whole application process and went through that. I talked with my tour consultant from EF this past week, and she let me know that they have not chosen any winners from that deadline or the deadline that was after for the next set. So if you applied, they just have not chosen any of those winners. And as soon as she told me as soon as they kind of work that out to kind of wait off, I guess, to see what the next few months might look like. But anytime that I have more info about that, I'll just send it out to everyone. So that way you know about that opportunity if you did the video submissions back in October and November. Some travel items. So the next couple slides are going to be things to think about, kind of start getting now, whether it's, Amazon, Best Buy, things like that, that are definitely going to be necessary for us to travel on our trip. So the biggest thing is an adapter / a converter. All 5 countries that we are going to require the Type C travel adapter. And as you can see, I tried to put a graphic here on the right-hand side. And so it's just the 2 circular prongs. I said 5 countries, even though we're not staying in Monaco, we're just kind of passing through Monaco. But if you had to have your adapter to plug into something when we stop there, but all 5 countries will require this type of an adapter. Italy and France also use Type F, but Type F is, if you think of our adapters here in the United States, we have 2-prong or 3-prong. And even though if the outlet is a 3-prong outlet, you can still use the 2. And there's really not a whole lot of difference. So between the Type C and the Type F, you might see Type F in your hotel, but it's just the same thing where there is kind of an extra prong that would be necessary there, but you could still use Type C for those specific adapters. Okay. And here on the next slide, I've hyperlinked 2 different options. Obviously, there are so many different options that you could have access to when it comes to looking at an adapter or a converter. I know you guys can't click on it right now because I'm sharing the PowerPoint, but once I send the PowerPoint out to everyone, this slide and the next slide as well are hyperlinked. So you're able to click on the images and it'll take you directly to the links on Amazon where I have found these 2 options. The biggest suggestion that I have is when you are thinking about your adapter and your converter for our trip is definitely think about the amount of USB outlets, such as the one here on the left. Because some of my chaperones who have traveled before, or maybe if you've traveled before, you can attest that, some of the hotel rooms might have 1 outlet or 2 outlets. And if you're a student traveler and you're with 3 other people, right, it's not going to be like fighting over the outlet. So if you have an adapter or a converter that has multiple USB outlets, you don't have to use your own converter. Like you could all share this specific one here with those USB outlets there as well. So just kind of think about that when it comes to you purchasing an adapter or a converter, because for the first time I traveled, I definitely didn't think about that. And, USB outlets on adapters and converters are definitely a big thing now. And you can see this one has 1 and probably another one on the opposite side with this right image. But the more USB openings to plug in your phone chargers, your AirPod chargers, whatever you might have would be the best when it comes to charging things overnight on our trip. Another important thing to think about is a portable charger, because as we go on, on this trip, you are going to want to take a lot of photos. And that might drain your phone depending upon how much you are on it. Me personally, I have the one that's over here on the right. It's not the exact same one, but it's pretty similar. And it works best for me because it has 3 outlets actually to charge things. So if for whatever reason my phone starts to die, I can plug in one. If my Apple Watch starts to die, and if I'm really upset about wanting it to be charged, I could plug it into another one. So just kind of think about that too, and how much money you're willing to pay for one. Just because, a smaller one, yes, might be a little bit more cost effective at the forefront. But if you do splurge a little bit and get maybe a more expensive one with even like 2 USB outlets, it's the battery life and the charging life is just going to last better for you, so you can charge multiple times. Or if one of your friends that you're sitting with, their phone dies and they have their charger, you can let them borrow your portable charger and be a good citizen and a good friend and help them out. All right. So just kind of think about those 2 things: an adapter and a converter. And definitely a portable charger are things that I always share very early on, because sometimes they're overlooked. And, we live in the age of our cell phones, right? And we want to take photos, and we want to send snap streaks to everyone and all that fun stuff. So you want to make sure that your phone is juiced up so you can do that. Okay. Last thing here, when it comes to some travel items, we are going to have a more detailed packing list that I will send out to you in April during our April meeting. But these are just some things to kind of start thinking about now. Obviously, your luggage is going to be, your checked bag is going to be probably your most important thing to think about. And there will be, like weight limits, which is typically around 50 pounds of a weight limit for your checked bag. And so if you already have a luggage, and if you want to say, hey, Mr. Linger, do you think this is going to be a good size? Just think about this, because I'm not going to carry your luggage. Miss Unger is not going to carry your luggage. Miss Jorgensen's not going to carry your luggage. You're responsible for your stuff. So, definitely think about that when it comes to what you're bringing with you, when it comes to your suitcases and your luggages and your personal items and backpacks, because you're responsible for that. And some of the hotels that we might be in, the elevators are not like massive 10 to 15 people elevators. They're like 3, 4, 5. And when it comes to your luggage and your backpack, it might be 2 or 3. So just kind of think about that, because you are going to be responsible for that. I want to make sure that, it's comfortable enough for you, that you have enough room for all of your stuff, but also that you're not like, oh my gosh, I wish I brought a smaller bag because I'm lugging this thing around 5 different countries and I'm gaining some muscles while carrying it, but I'm just kind of over carrying it. So just something to think about for that. Second item is your carry-on and a personal item. Your carry-on can be a backpack, it could be a satchel, it could be a purse if you want. Typically for ladies, their personal item is typically their purse. But just kind of think about what you want to bring on with you to the airplane as that carry-on item and your personal item. I would refrain from bringing a smaller type of luggage as your carry-on. I know some of us like to have clothing options, because I am that person. I will say that right now. But think about that when it comes to what you want to bring with you and on to the plane itself. Like for me, when I travel, I have my backpack. And my backpack, when we were in Greece 2 years ago, it was jammed full of everything, like passport stuff, all of my personal charging, cords and cables and adapters and everything else that I needed for that day. So just kind of think about what you would want to bring with you when it comes to a carry-on item. And definitely, I do suggest a backpack or, crossbody satchel or merce or purse, if you will, whatever, just so that way you can have like direct access to those things on your person. And also, you guys do get a backpack from EF. So closer to our departure, everyone actually gets an EF backpack. So don't think like you have to go out and buy this brand new North Face backpack just because you want one for the trip. You're going to get an EF backpack and some swag to take with you if you want to use that for your carry-on and personal item. Definitely think about bringing a light rain jacket. Where we will be at the start of our trip, climate and weather wise, is going to be very different than where we end the trip. When we get to Switzerland, even though it is going to be summer, high 60s, maybe low 70s, as we go into the mountains, if we're doing some of the Alp experiences there in Switzerland, it's definitely going to be a little bit colder and might even be a little bit more rainier. So think about a light rain jacket to bring specifically for like the beginning of the trip. But once we really leave Switzerland and get into northern Italy and go across the French Riviera and into Barcelona, Spain, it's going to be super warm. So it might be a waste to you to think to pack a light rain jacket or a nice kind of water resistant hoodie or something, but you're definitely going to need it for those first couple of days. And honestly, you'll need maybe a hoodie or a nice sweater for the plains too, because the plains often do get pretty cold. So just kind of think about that as well. And that kind of segues into the fourth bullet point, warmer clothes for those first couple of days. Maybe not necessarily pants or jeans or anything like that, but definitely something. Just think about your internal body temperature and what makes you comfortable. So do I need 3 layers? Do I need 4 layers? What do you need to make sure that you're not cold whenever we are in Switzerland? The next thing seems very appropriate to talk about just for a hot minute is travel size hand sanitizer. Not going to lie, when I traveled the last time, I didn't bring hand sanitizer with me because I honestly relied on Miss Unger for that because she always has hand sanitizer. But just because of, the age that we live in, definitely think about having those travel size bottles that you can bring with you, especially when it comes to hand sanitizer. We will have hand sanitizer available to us on the buses that we have. And they are actually cleaned and sanitized every single day, even though we're the only people using them. But just kind of think about those things that maybe we took for granted 2 years ago when it comes to tissues or hand sanitizers or whatever it might be for that. Middle here, comfortable sneakers and walking shoes. You definitely want to make sure that you have closed-toed shoes with you on this trip because it is a lot of walking. And I'm not going to call out my favorite English teacher, Miss Unger, but she had to, well, she just had to buy some new shoes, is all I'm going to say. And I know she's okay with me sharing that story. But just make sure that you bring comfortable shoes and break them in before you go, just because it's a lot of walking and I want to make sure that your feet don't hurt. Okay. Refillable water bottle. I will have probably a Yeti with me, maybe probably this one, honestly, to refill water and use with me on the trip. Definitely, I suggest that for everyone to bring as well, because it's going to be summer in these areas and it's going to be warm and it's going to be hot. And we want to make sure that you stay hydrated and that you have enough water. Okay. Just as a side note, we'll kind of talk about this as we get closer to, but you can't bring like a huge Yeti like this full of water with you to go onto the plane, but you can bring it empty, fill it up with water when we get through the, into our gate and into our terminal, and then you can fill it up with water or soda or whatever you want. But you can't bring large liquids like that with you as we go through security and as we check in. Last couple things here, definitely bring some pens. I don't anticipate us needing to need them a lot necessarily, but there might be things that we need to sign or that we need to do as we go from one area to another. And obviously, I just want to make sure that everyone it has their own pen with them. Put it in your backpack, put it in your personal item, so that way you can have access to that if we need to. Whether it's for rooming for a hotel for one night or whatever it might be as we go from one city, one site to another. Maybe some of the local guides might like give you like a little trivia, like a hunt and find or something like that in some of the areas that we might go to. So that might be something to have as well. Did not mean to go. Face masks. As of right now, I would make the assumption that we will need to have face masks with us. We're still over 100 days out from this, so I can't say 100% for sure whether we will need them the entire time, what it might be, but just kind of make the plan to have some face masks with you, whether they are reusable, whether you want to wear one the same day for all 11 days, whatever works best for you, whatever you feel comfortable with. But definitely just kind of make preparations and plan for that. Last couple of things: chargers, adapters, and converters. I shared some of those examples with you on the previous slides. And then some applications for your phone. We are going to be using a couple of these apps a lot. If you traveled with me in Greece in 2019, WhatsApp, if you've heard of WhatsApp, is basically just a texting messaging system that is Wi-Fi based. And so I will talk about this a little bit later on, but I do want every traveler, both adult, chaperone, and student, to have WhatsApp onto their phone, because I will be sending messages a lot through WhatsApp, and we'll have our own group with all the travelers, so that way we can all be in the know of that. If you want to start kind of prepping and planning some different language skills, Duolingo, if you've heard of that before, is an app as well that can have you learn different languages and kind of look at different vocabulary and stuff like that. And there are several countries that we're going to. So in Switzerland, we have German, Italian, and French that could be spoken to us when we're there. In Italy, yes, Italian. In France, French. And in Spain, Spanish. So a lot of languages here that you could start kind of like prepping and quizzing yourself if you want to, just to learn some basic phrases. And our tour director too, whoever is with us, they will give us some phrases that we will use probably on a regular basis, just because they want us to kind of feel comfortable when we're there, and to kind of make you go out of your comfort zone to use languages that maybe you haven't used before. And then the last app is Cluster. Again, if you traveled with us to Greece in 2019, Cluster is an application where you can take photos of the trip, and everyone can post them there, so anyone in our group can see these photos. Like, for example, if some of the travelers are doing one of the excursions and not everyone is, those individuals can still post those photos, and so that way people can see, family members can see just what you are doing and seeing while on the trip. So just kind of something to think about. And I'll talk more about these apps more in depth as we get closer. With our breakout rooms that we are going to start here in just a second, it is going to be focused on the itinerary. So in the chat box, I'm going to send everyone an itinerary link. And if you could open that itinerary link up on your device, whether you're using a phone, a computer, whatever, because you will need to access this itinerary for your breakout room. So I just sent it into the chat. I'm going to give everyone just a minute to open it up. And like Mr. Barner said, open it before we go into the breakout rooms, just so that way you have access to it. And it actually gives me a second to get the breakout rooms prepared and planned as well. So I sent it in the chat, eftours.com/e-literature/dbd/s. You can read the rest. So just click on that, open it in a new tab on your phone, on your laptop, whatever you are on, and just have it pulled up. And I'm going to get the breakout rooms queued up. And I'm going to mute myself just in case I mess up. But I will explain what the breakout rooms are going to be here in just a second. All right, so with our breakout rooms, I'm actually going to send my chaperones into their breakout rooms first, and then I will auto-populate all the other travelers into the breakout room that you'll just be randomly put into. There are two things that I want you to accomplish in the breakout room. First is I want you to introduce yourselves. My chaperones are going to introduce themselves first if you don't know who they are. And then I would like each traveler or travelers that are in the breakout rooms to just say, hey, this is who I am. and just kind of who you are. If you want to turn your video on, then that would be a good time to do so. And then with the itinerary link that I sent, so each breakout room is going to have a specific section of the itinerary to talk about and to discuss. My chaperones will probably share first what they're most looking forward to in that specific section. So for example, if the Zimmermans get put into the breakout room with Miss Riffle and Miss Gletner, they're going to look at days 1 through 3. And they're going to look at those specific days and talk about maybe what they're most excited about, what they want to look forward to, maybe what they want to know more about on that specific section of the itinerary. And same thing for whatever room that you're put into. So if you're in Miss Riffle and Miss Gletner's breakout room, you'll look at days 1 through 3 of the itinerary. If you are in Mrs. Jorgensen or Miss Horner's breakout room, you will look at days 4 and 5. If you are in Mr. Grog or Mr. Barner's breakout room, you will look at days 6 through 7. And if you are in the last breakout room with Miss Unger and Miss Lemons, you will look at days 8 through 10. Okay, so go ahead and pull up the itinerary on your device. I'm going to get the breakout room started. We're only going to stay here for maybe like 5-6 minutes. I want it to be something where obviously like you introduce yourselves, you talk, you feel comfortable enough to do so. I know we're like in the age of doing these virtual meetings and we're like, do we really have to talk? But jump out of your comfort zone, just say, hey, this is who I am. And don't be afraid to, when my chaperones ask, look at your itinerary and what are you most excited about, or what don't you know? Say something. Say if I've never heard of the country of Monaco before, if you're looking at one of the specific sections, or I don't even know what city we're flying into, or just anything like that. And I know some of my chaperones, they might have just some random trivia and facts to share with you about those sections as well. All right. So once I get my chaperones into their rooms, then I'll get the travelers and we'll stay there for just about 5, 6, no more than 7 minutes. Okay. Give me just a second and you will get into your room. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, you got to know something about some of the individuals that were in your breakout room. And hopefully, it was a cool thing for you to just to have some interactions with some people. You know, if you have not had some of the teachers that were on here, or if you have had them, maybe it was just a good, like, hey, I missed you, whatever it might be, for some of those people, because you know, all the chaperones that I have going with us, they are awesome. And I'm also so thankful to have all of you who are going on this experience as well. Does anyone real quick want to share maybe one thing in their breakout rooms that they were most excited about? And don't all jump at once.
You can go, if you need to speak, you just go like that.
But just leave it muted.
And you're even off the video. See, this is on, that's off. You know,
So I'll go because
Okay, Miss
I
Riffle.
but you
I
can go.
didn't get to say this in my breakout room because we ran out of time, but I'm really looking forward to the different types of foods in both Zurich and Lucerne. I was researching prior to this and I discovered that there are a lot more than just cheeses and sausages that you can try in these areas. So there's like a little macaroon that is so distinct to Zurich that I'm really hoping that I get to try it.
Same, because thinking about food, because what we're going to look at here in a second is going to make me super hungry. So I'm excited for that. Any student traveler, thanks, Miss Riffle, for sharing. Any student want to pipe up and say what they're most excited about or looking forward to?
I'll go. I'm
Go
really
ahead.
excited for the food too. One of them because I want to be a chef, so I want to I was planning on doing stuff like that to learn new dishes and stuff. But I'm really excited to go somewhere other than here because why not? I've also only been to Italy, so I'm really excited to just widen my palette for always around. So
yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bella, for sharing. You know, one thing about traveling is definitely with the food. I mean, I think food can bond everyone in such a different way. Just because our own experiences of what we might eat and what we might share together. And, you know, for dinners and stuff, we're all going to be together, you know, eating basically the same thing. And we all will have these memories revolved around food that we're able to share, because that really is something that might tie, you know, individuals and their experiences together. So it's not just taking photos of the food. It's actually like eating it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want this. I want more gelato. Miss Unger. I want all the sweets and all of that stuff that you can just just take it all in. And so food is definitely something that I am personally looking forward to because I love food. So thank you guys for those of you who shared. I would have more of you offer to share, but I want to make sure we just get through some things and we don't go over an hour here. So with that, if you were in the first couple of days of the itinerary, you were looking specifically at Switzerland. And so for our meeting today, so just to kind of have like a little spotlight on a country, we are going to look at what some of the expectations and culture that we might experience when we are in Switzerland. First thing is looking specifically at money. I talked a little bit about money back in November, but Switzerland will be the only country that we're in that does not use the euro. All the other countries, France, Italy, Monaco, and Spain, they use the euro as their form of currency. Switzerland still uses the Swiss franc. And so we'll talk a little bit later on if you want to order some Swiss francs to have with you before going over. But just know that it is the first country that we're going to, and that it has a different monetary system than any of the others that we will be in for the rest of the trip. For the weather, the highs will be in the mid 70s, lows in the mid 50s. So pretty easy when it comes to summer, because you know it's late June, beginning to early of July. So it will be warm, but definitely not blistering, hopefully, unlike the heat wave that happened in Europe 2 years ago. But it won't be as warm as maybe what you're expecting to have like an 80 and 90 summer in Switzerland. Now, when we get to the Mediterranean with the French Riviera and Barcelona, that's when it's going to be hitting those higher temperatures that maybe you're looking forward to in having on your experience. For the language, you can see here in the graphic in the bottom right, there are actually 4 main languages that are heavily spoken. In Switzerland, German, French, and Italian are going to be the main three that you might come into contact with, especially since we are flying into Zurich. And then our main focus for our time in Switzerland is going to be in Lucerne. So that'll be in that Swiss, German, and more French prominently speaking areas of the area of Switzerland that we will be in. The last one on here is tipping, and it's also hyperlinked. I hyperlinked it to a website, so you'll be able to click on that when you get the PowerPoint after the meeting if you wish. Just as kind of a general statement, in Europe, individuals that are waiters or waitresses in these restaurants, they make a little bit more of, I mean, I hate to say it, but a livable wage than maybe waiters or waitresses do in the United States. So tipping is not necessarily something, it's common, but it's not as heavily practiced as you might think here as it is in the United States. So if you go to a restaurant in Switzerland during lunch to actually sit down during your free time and order some food, their basic tipping rate is only about 8 to 10%. So maybe not the norm of 15, 20, maybe 25 that you might experience in some of the places here in the United States. So just kind of keep that in the back of your brain, because for them it is a career, and maybe not something that they're just doing to pay for college or to buy a new car or something like that. Some other things to think about when we are going to be in Switzerland. Obviously, public restrooms, going to the bathroom is going to be something that's really important, because we're going to leave the hotel and we won't get back really early, and we won't get back to the hotel until not very late, but later in the evening. So definitely think about, using the restroom when we are out and about. Typically in Switzerland, you will see them identified as water closets. So if you see like a WC, that's typical, the symbol in a lot of the areas that we'll be in, actually, that signifies a public restroom. And most of them, you will actually have to pay 1 to 2 Swiss francs to use. Just because some of them are actually self-sanitizing. So like after you use it, it self-sanitizes and it cleans like the whole thing before someone else uses it. So that's just kind of something to think about when you're out and about on your free time. You might have 1 or 2 Swiss francs with you so that you're able to use the restroom. And with that, I know it's kind of weird to talk about using the bathroom and doing that, but anytime you have the opportunity, even if you don't think you have to pee, go pee, because it might be an hour, it might be half an hour, it might be whatever, from going from one place to another. And I just want to make sure that you're able to do that during your free time. And anytime our tour director says, hey, if you have 10 minutes to use the bathroom, go do it. Even if you don't think you need to, just do it. Tap water in Switzerland is actually pretty okay to drink. If you were with us in Greece, not so much. Just because of different sanitizing expectations and purifications expectations they have there. But generally speaking, the tap water is safe to drink. If it's not, our tour director will definitely let us know. But definitely kind of just have that in the back of your brain as well. Swiss folk music. Some of you are going on doing the fondue experience, and that will include some Swiss folk music as well, and maybe even one of the instruments that you oversee here in the top right-hand corner. Music is very important to them. As we're walking through Lucerne, and probably even in the airport in Zurich, the culture is definitely rooted in their music and in their celebrations and in their festivals. So just kind of keep that in your brain as well, because music, our type of music that maybe you listen to is definitely probably not the same as the Swiss folk music. But if it's being played, as you're walking through and you see street performers, like, just take a second to listen as you're walking by, because it's some pretty cool experiences that you might have as you're going through that. The third to last bullet point here, there is a campaign, and I in my research, it is kind of dying out, but it's called the Free Hug campaign. And while in theory it might sound like it's good, maybe not so good for free hugs during COVID, obviously. But these groups of individuals are actually a part of, in some way, a pickpocketing scam. That way, if you try and give a free hug to someone, and there are actually other individuals that might rummage through your pockets or your purse or whatever. So just always, when you travel, just as a general rule of thumb, just always be wary of your surroundings and your items that you have on you. Like for me, my phone is always in my front pocket and my wallet is always in the other one, or it's in my backpack that's really close to the side of my body. And I say that not to scare you, because that could happen in Martinsburg, it could happen in DC, it could happen anywhere, but just kind of be aware of your surroundings. And, you know, if anyone comes up to you trying to sell you something or give you a bracelet or whatever, I mean, sure, you can maybe try a bracelet and buy one if you want, but just kind of keep walking and just kind of go about your business. Second to last thing, small talk. I actually hate small talk just because I feel like I'm a weird person that doesn't make small talk pretty easily unless you get to know me. I saw Joel make a face. I saw that, Joel. But small talk actually in Switzerland is typically discouraged because they're pretty like straight and forward and to the point, and then that's it. So like, you know, when you go to a restaurant with your family or something and they're like, oh, hi, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing my food, or blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not necessarily something that they do there. Like if you're doing those experiences and things like that, small talk just with, you know, some random person or a street food vendor or a waiter is just not going to be something that is expected. And then the last thing, the cost of living actually is high in Switzerland. So when you buy your Swiss chocolate or your extra fondue or your cheese or whatever, just expect it to be a little bit more expensive than maybe what you think it is, just because the cost of living is relatively high in Switzerland. And so, you know, for us as travelers going there, you know, buying souvenirs might be a little bit more expensive than what we're used to. So just kind of keep that into account too when maybe you're thinking about planning out and saving some money for the first couple of days of the trip. And then the last thing for Switzerland is the food. And some of you talked about the food in your breakout rooms and you shared that. Obviously, food is a really kind of crucial part of these trips, just so you can kind of experience things and we can all share experiences around food. Breakfast in Switzerland will be at the hotel, and you can kind of see their typical cold cut or deli meats, eggs, breads, coffee and tea, fruits and yogurts, and also some type of Swiss oatmeal will probably be the staple of what you can expect during our breakfasts at the hotel. Lunches will be on your own, unless probably maybe you're doing one of the fondue excursions, and then we'll all have dinner together as well. Some of the items that you can see there are typical Swiss kind of traditional food. So the first one, raclette, cheese, potatoes, onions, and pickled fruit. I'm not even try and say the second one because I don't want to butcher it, but the second one is au gratin potatoes, macaroni, cheese, and onions. So you're probably seeing a theme here of a lot of cheese, a lot of potatoes. So just get ready to like induce yourself into a carb coma whenever you're here in Switzerland. Rosti is hot cake and potatoes. Actually, this is the Rosti down here in the bottom left. They have a lot of tarts and quiches as kind of something that is a traditional food as well. And then Malakoff is fried cheese, basically fried cheese balls. You would think of it as an appetizer, but that might be just a meal that maybe you might experience with some other things as well, as being some typical traditional items to consume in Switzerland. Obviously fondue, and if you're signed up for the fondue excursion, you'll be able to experience that. And then some snacks, as much cheese as you can humanly intake when you're in Switzerland. And then same thing for the chocolate. Just make sure you maybe buy some chocolate for mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever is helping you pay for the trip. Hopefully it won't melt throughout the next 10 days and you can bring it back to them and they can have some really good, maybe a little bit expensive Swiss chocolate. All right, the last couple of things here, kind of shifting away from focusing at Switzerland and looking at Switzerland, are some of the forms that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. So the first one is the student roommate request. So rooming will vary from city to city. It just depends on the hotel. And if you've traveled before with us, you know, sometimes in one hotel you might be with just 2 other people. It might be a room of 3 for students. It might be a room of 4. It just really depends on the hotels and the rooms that they assign and they give to our specific group, okay? And I mentioned this before as well, adults will room with 1 other adult traveler unless you've requested with EF to have your student stay with you for a little bit of an extra cost, just because of the student price being less expensive because of having 3 to 4 people in a room. or for those of you who are families traveling together, the email that I sent out about requesting a family room. So that way you'd be able to stay together with that. And if you are thinking about requesting a family room, do call EF sooner rather than later. So that way they can put that onto your accounts and make sure that rooming, at least for the adult tied to the student of that family, can be taken care of. Every student, even if you are a student that you're staying in a family room, or you're staying with your mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever is going with you, I still need every student to complete this Google form. And I'm going to pull it up here actually, just because there is an agreement part at the bottom that I want students to sign, basically signing off saying that some of my expectations when it comes to rooming. So this is what the roommate Google form looks like. And it is due by March 7th, again, for every student traveler. Depending upon the hotel, you may be in rooms of 2 to 3 or 4 travelers. In each of the blank spots below, type the name of the person you would prefer to room with. If you do not know any other student traveler going, I'm going to send with the email out after the meeting, there's going to be a Word document of all the travelers, all the student travelers that are going. So that way, if you just want to randomly pick someone, I guess you can randomly pick someone. The individuals you list below may not be exactly who you always room with, just because it might vary from one city to another, but it will really let me, because student rooming it's a nightmare, but it's not a nightmare because there are so many of you and you probably have a lot of friends that might be going with you. And I want to make sure that everyone can at least stay, maybe not every single night with their core group of friends. And again, it just depends on what hotels we are. So it might be a room of 2, it might be a room of 3, it might be a room of 4. And if you've traveled with us before, you can kind of attest to that with the rooms just being different in each city that we stay in. And it's just kind of, this form is so that way I can see who you want to mesh with, who you want to stay with, and how I can make that work for everyone. So the traveler name, the student traveler name, and then there are 4 boxes. So up to 4 other student individuals that are going with you that you would like to room with. Here at the bottom, it says, are there any additional informations that I should know before going on this trip? Do you have issues with any other students? Do you not want to be close to Miss Unger because she smells like feet? Anything like that, just because that way I don't put you with someone that you don't want to necessarily be with. Are you a light sleeper? Are you a snorer? Or do you have night terrors? Do you sleepwalk? Just kind of things to think about when I'm looking at rooming situations. And then here at the bottom in the bold, this is why I want every student traveler to do it, even if you are rooming with an adult or a family member. Per EF guidelines, males and females will be staying in separate rooms. Once we return to the hotel each evening, I will give everyone a specified time for that night's curfew and for bed checks, because we do bed checks and we do wake up calls. At that specific time, a chaperone will complete bed check for all student travelers. Each student traveler is required to be in the room at the time of the bed check and stay in your room until wake-up calls the following morning. By typing in your name below and having your parent or guardian type in their name below is my way of having you agree to this expectations and to these guidelines that I am setting forth and that my chaperones will be implementing as well. And just know that by breaking any of these rules or expectations, you do risk disciplinary action and could possibly be sent home. So long story short is, once we do bed checks, and as student travelers, when you're in rooms with other students, you're staying there until wake up calls. And if you leave, I'm sending you home because I'm not dealing with that. All right. So with you typing your name and having your parent or guardian, that's my way of saying that you know and you agree to this, and we're good to go from there. Okay, so that is due by March 7th. I'm going to copy and paste the link, the Google form, into the chat right now if you want to go ahead and start working on it, but you don't have to, especially if you aren't sure necessarily of other individuals going on the trip. So just know that I will send multiple reminders about, hey, make sure you do the Google form, make sure every student traveler does this, so I can have access to that and start looking at rooming situations and start putting people together for some different options. The second form that needs to be completed by March 7th is the medical profile form. This is for every traveler, every adult, every student, and every chaperone, okay? If you go to our website, so www.cardinalsabroad.com, you can find a digital copy of this there, which I'm going to pull it up here. So I'm on the website and I just went to the documents tab, and then right here it says medical profile form. I'm also going to attach it into the email as a follow-up once the meeting is over. But it just asks for some basic medical information and some traveler health about any allergies, medication, medical conditions, and things like that. And then it has you sign and date at the end. So this medical profile form, as well as a copy of your insurance card for every traveler, is due by March 7th. If you want to complete the form digitally and send it back to my email with all forms completed and the copy of your insurance card, that's totally fine. If you want to wait and bring it to our hopeful in-person meeting on March 7th, you can do that as well. Okay. And again, it's going to be the medical profile form. I'll attach it at the end of the meeting in the email, and also just a front and back copy of your insurance card. The last thing here is about passports, which are super important. Obviously, to travel internationally, you need to have a passport, and it's necessary for every traveler. Something that people might not know is that you have to sign your passport. So right here in the top where it says Joe Sample, like whenever you are traveling with your passport, it has to be signed. So at the beginning, I mentioned needing 2 color copies. This is where it comes into really important focus here, that it's a color copy, and it's also signed. Every year, someone gives me copies of their passport, and I'm like, it's not signed. And even though in theory it could work that you could sign it right there, I'd rather you sign your actual passport and then give me another copy of its true signing. So just please make sure that by March 7th, I do need 2 color copies looking like this with both pages, the top page where it says "We the People" in your signature, and the bottom page, which has your information. I would prefer these to be given to me in person. I would prefer you to not send it as an email, as an attachment, just for any concerns that maybe individuals might have. And again, hopefully our March 7th meeting will be in person. But otherwise, if students do go back into the building, and if you have a BRIC student and that you want me to have your passport before that, you can send even the medical profile form if you want, as well as the copies of your passport and your insurance card. And I skipped over something that was super important. This third bullet point, please make sure that your full name on your passport matches your EF account. It's really silly and it's really stupid, but I've known of people in the past to get a $110 fine because their EF account name did not match their passport. And on their ticket that they got printed when they went to go fly out of somewhere, the name didn't match because of the name on their EF account. And if your name does not match your ticket to your passport, they're not going to let you go. So if for whatever reason you have a different name or a nickname on your EF account, make sure it's your full name, first, middle, and last name on your EF account as it is on your passport. All right. And that takes us to the end of our meeting. I went a little bit over an hour. I apologize. Sometimes I get long-winded with going through this stuff, but I'm just excited for all of this to keep rolling on and to keep happening, and really to give you guys some insight as to some things to just kind of plan and prepare for as we're getting ready for our trip to happen at the end of June. I appreciate you guys for being here. This QR here in the bottom left is just the sign-in form again. So if you left that open as we went through the meeting, just make sure you submit that so that way I have that. And especially if you had any questions, you could have put those on that Google form as well. All right. I hope you guys have a good Sunday, and I will send a follow-up message to everyone a little bit after the end of this meeting. So you guys are free to go, and I appreciate you guys for being here, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Mr. Linger, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How am I supposed to get the $120 to you by next month?
So the 120 is actually due by the May meeting. And so there's some time that to bring the $120 for the tip. So you don't have to do it by March. Hopefully we'll be back in person for our March meeting. But it can be a check or just $120 in cash. But that's not due until our May meeting.
Okay, so if I was gonna do that, I don't really see you. And if we don't have that May meeting, I don't really see you, but my sister Lauren sees you. If I can't get it to you by then, could I have Lauren, can I give a check to her and she give it to you or?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And even as we get closer on to the next couple meetings, and I keep on saying hopefully in person, that can be the time when we have those meetings as well, to bring not even just like the tip money, but just like the color copies of the passports and stuff like that. And if we don't have the meeting in person in March, I'm going to set up some sort of like plan or drop off for us to meet at like Daily Grind or something to still get some of those copies of those passports. If between now and then kids still aren't in the building, to just get those copies as well.
Great.
Okay,
thanks.
thank you.
Yep, of course. Anyone have any questions if you're hanging around? Jenny, I always throw you under the bus. I don't know why. It's just easy. I love you and I'm sorry. So
She got them smelly feet.
Yeah, but I've got those Europe shoes on. I have the shoes on you were talking about.
you could have been like,
The world's most comfortable shoes.
Then I sent her a picture of
How do I sign in?
Yeah, Scott sent me a picture of me